Rare Gem Productions proudly presents Entrepreneurially Thinking. Entrepreneurially Thinking is a presentation of BioSTL and CET, the Center for Emerging Technologies, changing the way you view new ventures and activating your entrepreneurial mindset, empowering you to create new pathways for business success in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. Here's your hosts, Cheryl and Christy. Now let's get thinking entrepreneurially.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. I'm Christy Maxfield.
And I'm Dr. Cheryl Watkins-Moore, lead of our STEM Inclusion Initiative for BioSTL. Hey, girl.
How are you?
Back. It's been a while.
I know. We, as our listeners probably know, we record a few shows in advance before they air, but it has been a break for us because we had a lot in the queue.
Yes. But it hasn't been a break for us personally.
No. Just we haven't been at the podcast couch.
Yes.
Conference room turned studio in a while, but we've been busy. And part of our busy is planning season 9, and this is we're kicking off season 9 with amazing first-rate guests, interviews, and episodes, and continuing to make a positive impact and adding listeners each week. And the most important part of that is because it's important to have role models, right?
Yes.
And so we firmly believe that it's important for us to model and share the stories, elevate and celebrate the stories of those folks who are living the entrepreneurial experience, because that's where we get our inspiration.
Absolutely.
I hope you get yours.
Absolutely. And we believe in these people, guys. I mean, we wouldn't be having them on the show. We want to find out what they're doing. It's really cool to really understand what folks are doing in our community and outside of it.
We've brought some people back. So that's how much we care, right?
Yes.
And we have to thank our sponsors, our founding presenting sponsors, CET and BioSTL, for their continued support.
Yes.
This has been a commitment on their part as well. And so you can check out Square One. The Ignite program is going on this spring. BioSTL's got all of its programming in the works. We got an ideation session coming up soon. So there's always stuff going on. We encourage you to check out our website, check out their website, and keep tuning in.
And 2019 is starting off with a bang.
It's a big bang. So, we're going to spread the word and ask you to do the same. So follow the hashtags ETHINKSTL, eThink Podcast, Stay Listening, which we're now turning into a hashtag to immortalize Miss Cheryl. Give a shout out to your favorite guests. Invite your friends to subscribe. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcast, iTunes, Spreaker, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So what are we doing? How are we banging?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I wasn't ready for that.
Honestly, neither was I.
Oh, my God.
But you said we were starting off with a bang.
We are. As you all know, there's a lot of activity, entrepreneurial activity here in St. Louis. In many publications, we've been noted in the top 3 cities for startup activity in the country, guys. So if you are thinking about starting a venture, you better head your little butt down to St. Louis. We can help you out. So
come say hi to me and Cheryl. We'll get you acclimated.
That's right. So a local publication that focuses on St. Louis's entrepreneurial scene has a unique way of telling its stories. I think they are awesome. They tell a lot of stories about what's going on here in the community. They have their ear to the ground on a lot of things of what's going on. So when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Jonathan Allen he's from literally across the pond.
Really? You're going to go with that? Okay. Just saying. That's brave.
Literally.
Okay.
And learn how 2 dinosaurs brings us into a modern startup business that shares the name of a childhood book. So, as I always say, stay listening.
CET, the Center for Emerging Technologies, is a proud founding sponsor of this Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. We want you to know all about the great things they are up to. Square One is CET's flagship program for entrepreneurs. It's a hands-on training program designed to provide support to first-time entrepreneurs in the St. Louis region actively engaged in the development of bioscience, information technology, or advanced manufacturing commercial enterprise. To learn more about Square One Bootcamp or Square One Ignite, visit CETSTL.com. And for your renewed and continuing support, CET, we say thank you.
Hey, I'm Jonathan Allen, Editor-in-Chief of ETHINKSTL-111-Jonathan. Entrepreneurially thinking means to me looking at your community, identifying an issue that needs to be solved, and then taking it upon yourself to go and solve it.
Joining us today is Jonathan Allen, president of Longneck and Thunderfoot, a 2016 Arch Grant recipient. As Cheryl alluded to, Jonathan was born and raised in London. He literally, which I don't believe is anyone's accent, but that's okay. Came to the United States 9 years ago and spent 6 years in New York and then the last 3 here in St. Louis. And has been the recipient of numerous awards from the various different startups he's done. Everything from the Experimental and Innovation Webby Award, the Community Engagement Award, and 3 BAFTA nominations. So quite accomplished in what he does.
Yes.
And some of you may know that in 2015, EQ was launched, but then in 2017, Jonathan acquired that property, so that we're going to talk to him about Longneck and Thunderfoot, about EQ, about being an entrepreneur, about being an Arch Grants recipient, and maybe, the critique of your accent. I'm not quite sure. But joining us is Jonathan Allen. So thank you so much for being here, Jonathan. We've shocked and awed him.
I'm trying to think of an appropriate, hello.
Oh, chap. Right?
Love it.
Right? And he's like, thank you for totally butchering my...
That's okay. Do you think I would stand out in London? No, with my accent.
Yes, it would be your accent.
Yes.
Most definitely.
But no, thank you for joining us, dude. You have such a storied background, storied history, serial entrepreneur. First question I want to ask, what the hell is Longneck and Thunderfoot? I know there's a story behind that. What's the story?
So, funnily enough, it's I didn't expect to go into doing another startup. I tried a couple in London and then kind of quit it and thought, it's time to get a proper job. And
that's
ended up
hard for any entrepreneur, right?
Right.
But good luck for, kudos to you for trying.
Yes.
And ended up in New York with a proper job. But then when it came to setting up Longneck and Thunderfoot, it was I wasn't expecting to go back into doing startups again. And
what were you doing in New York? Were you working at an agency or something?
I was doing a publication called Search Engine Watch, which is all about SEO and getting #1 on Google.
Okay.
Wasn't expecting to kind of go back into startups, and we kind of was sort of forced into it in the sense of oh God. So I lost my job, basically.
Hey, being forced into it happens in a lot of different ways.
I was going to say entrepreneurialism, a lot of people start at that right there.
It's entrepreneurship out of necessity.
There you go. There you go.
And I'd been looking around and, I was a foreigner, immigrant in inverted commas, and it was well, I don't want to go back into another job I could just get fired from. And had a lot of success with Search Engine Watch, and we'd won an award. And in America, if you win an award, you can apply for the O1 Alien of Extraordinary Ability visa.
Okay.
And that is, I call it the X-Men visa.
I like it.
Yeah.
And you can actually be a co-owner of a company with an American partner. So I teamed up with my friend Cooper, and we didn't know kind of what to call it. And we knew we wanted to do digital marketing. And I had a friend in London who, I grew up with, and he was very tall and I was very clumsy. So we were always you're Longneck and I'm Thunderfoot.
Oh my God, there it comes.
Is that a childhood book?
And it is. So, then it turns out that the childhood book is about 2 dinosaurs that are scared of each other but have to collaborate to survive the extinction.
Oh, my goodness.
That is so cool.
And that kind of played well into the digital marketing company concept we had.
That's exciting.
That is exciting. So you grew up in London, right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in London.
London's an amazing place.
How many siblings did you have? We just want to get that backstory
so
out the way.
My mum's Sri Lankan. My dad's English.
Okay.
I've got a younger sister, 2 years younger. She's an amazing artist. She's actually gone viral 2 or 3 times. She's one of the first people to go viral on YouTube.
Wow.
Back in the day when the Korean singer went viral with that horse song. What was it called?
Oh, Gangnam Style?
Gangnam Style. So
Yes,
So Gangnam Style is the first video to get 1 million views on YouTube.
I didn't know that.
And,
that's cool.
That is cool.
And my sister went viral 3 months later with a kind of a video about reincarnation and things like that.
Oh, wow.
We're going to have some Googling
So you
after
guys
this.
are just creative in your family.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you were educated in London, or?
Yeah, did literature and philosophy as a student, and went to a kind of city actually that's a bit like St. Louis because it's got
the UK.
In the UK, yeah, it's on.
Wow.
It's actually on the coast, but it's kind of like it's the agricultural sort of area, and it's kind of like St. Louis. It's got a pub for every day of the year and a church for every Sunday.
I love that. I love
That's the new slogan for the city. Done. Boom.
pub for every, what is it, street corner?
Every day of the year.
Every day of the year.
And a church for every Sunday. Right. Whichever Sunday you want.
Whatever Sunday.
That's awesome.
That is very cool. Oh, wow. So what were you doing in that city then?
So that was university.
Okay.
Made a lot of friends there, and it was kind of an interesting place because it was where you could do joint degrees, so literature combined with philosophy, which in America is quite, normal. But actually in the UK, that was kind of relatively new.
Interesting.
And had a lot of friends in tech there, so they were building a lot of things like their own message boards and things like that. And it was actually through them that I got into the startup scene in London.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's where you got bit by the startup.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you came to the States, and then you started your own company with Longfoot and Thunderfoot.
Yeah, that's it. No,
Longneck and Thunderfoot. Yes. So
Yeah.
take us after that, after you started the company.
So then basically we joined the Columbia Startup Lab in New York. And that was an amazing kind of unexpected win. We went into a meeting with Columbia. My co-founder, Cooper, he was in Columbia University. And we didn't actually think we were eligible because we didn't want investors. And, we're a services company, really, not a technology company. But we went in and they said, we're doing this new initiative and we're interviewing people who've founded their own companies. And we realized that we got their attention when we said, well, they asked us how many clients we had. And we said, well, we've got 7 paying customers. And they were like, 7?
They're used to hearing
0.
none.
0, right?
And we were like, yeah, thinking that was nothing. But apparently that was everything.
It's all relevant, right?
Well, what I find interesting about your founder story in some ways, too, is you chose entrepreneurship for its stability, right? Because you were like, I don't want to get fired from another job, right? And then going to Columbia, you're like, I got 7.
Right.
And then that's traction, right? So everything's relative is what I'm taking out of sort of these nuggets is like, one man's high-risk venture is another man's way to make sure he's not subject to the whims of others, right?
And he wasn't interested in raising money, which I know Columbia had to be like, what?
And one man's very slow build of customer acquisition is another man's bonanza, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
You blew them away with your 7.
That's
and
very
so
cool.
you guys got in.
Yeah, we got in. And, I've got another phrase for you.
Oh, good. I need one. I like to collect these, so lay it on me.
In the digital marketing industry, in SEO and, email, we say one man's spam is another man's roast beef.
Oh, God.
Until the algorithm says it's spam.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't matter if it's roast beef to anybody because they're bumping you off servers.
Oh, my God.
That's good. I like spam, and I'm writing down spam roast beef.
This will be on your website.
I'm thinking we might have started a new trend for 2019.
Yeah, exactly.
Catchphrases. So you got in, and then you made your way to St. Louis, which means you also got the attention of someone else.
Yeah, so one of the amazing things about accelerators and the Columbia one was it kind of gave us credibility in a way that we weren't used to, because we'd previously been kind of working at home, like not even necessarily in the same room, quite often remotely. But with Columbia, it was like there was an office to go to, and it was a WeWork, it was co-working, and we just had 2 desks. But it kind of gave this sort of flavor of official things.
Right. We're for real.
You're a real company. Right.
Exactly. And that actually made it much easier to employ people. So we suddenly went from, we're just doing this on our own, to actually people want to come and work here.
Wow.
And actually, because of the kind of extra glamour and things like that of a co-working space, it was much easier to hire good people than we thought.
Yeah, because they could see you weren't working in a dump.
Yeah.
And you had some traction. You had some customers paying so you could hire. So you guys were an immediate impact to the economy, which is really cool, you know, and growing your company.
And that was the thing. It's like as soon as you had employees, then there was a kind of rubber hits the road moment, and you had to kind of manage other people. And it forced you also to kind of recalculate prices because now you had more mouths to feed.
Right.
And that whole tension was actually a really good way to build a company. And then by the same token, what happened was...
And you guys were a service company, you said?
Yeah.
Doing the SEO optimization.
Exactly, and blogging and that kind of thing.
Okay.
The reason we ended up applying for an Arch grant is one of our cohort members in Colombia, Christina Hawatme at Skopje, she'd won an Arch grant. And my girlfriend applied to Wash U and got into Wash U. And I was like, well, she's a good one. I've been in New York 6-7 years now.
I think I'll keep her.
Hey, you and I both got here via that. We can't throw any stones.
You're absolutely right. We did the same thing.
He's
my
a keeper.
husband's from here. Right. Followed him here.
Smart man, you can start a company anywhere.
Yeah, right.
Finding a good woman, it's hard.
That's right.
Right, exactly. You know, there's a moment where you have a realization like that.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And so discovered Arch grants. And the thing was one of the things we were struggling with was hiring salespeople in New York because salaries were much higher.
Yes.
There's a lot of churn. You know, the thought was, well, we've already benefited from Columbia and all that structure. Arch grants is going to give us a whole nother layer of structure in a new city. And presumably we can be quite a cool place to work with connections to New York. And people who are staying here probably have reasons to kind of grow and develop their career here. So hopefully there'll be a bit less churn and we can build the sales side of the organization.
So you guys are very strategic. I mean, and what you just said, you know, Columbia gave you a certain amount of structure, like you say, around your company. Then you were looking strategically at what you could gain from coming here to St. Louis, being in the St. Louis ecosystem, as well as what Arch Grants could provide for you. What was the difference in what you found Arch Grants benefit to you versus Columbia? How did it make your company grow even more?
Well, so one of the things we'd found was that traditional business really did want to adapt to online. And so actually in the Midwest, lots of big traditional companies with, you know, always paid their bills on time. So we found like here was a good client base. And with Arch Grants, what they did that Columbia didn't do was introductions to the community. And so that just got us a running start. We met Emerson, we met Green Street, we met Stiefel. Stiefel have been a client of ours ever since we've got here.
That's great. So they opened doors and St. Louis was a welcoming city for you.
Exactly.
So when we come back, we can explore more about how you explored St. Louis.
Sounds good.
BioSTL is a proud founding sponsor of this entrepreneurially thinking podcast, and we want you to know all about the great things they are up to. BioSTL Fundamentals is an entrepreneur development program targeted to founders wishing to start a company in the bioscience space, including therapeutic products, diagnostic products, medical devices, animal and crop agriculture products, and research tools. Participants earn resources by achieving specific coaching goals. You can learn more about BioSTL Fundamentals by visiting biostl.org. And for your renewed and continuing support, BioSTL, we say thank you.
Betsy Cohen, St. Louis Mosaic Project. Entrepreneurial thinking to me means creating a path where nothing has been before, envisioning something that we can take each other to and move forward.
So we've made it from London to St. Louis, actually via New York.
Right.
And as Cheryl took us into our second
Did you
part
forget
of our
my name?
No, it was a dramatic pause.
It's a dramatic pause.
Took us into... You're hopeless. To exploring St. Louis. What you were sharing with us is really that what distinguished New York and St. Louis was the ability to really get grounded and take the company to the next level. I think that's interesting because we often think about graduating to New York.
Yes.
And you graduated to St. Louis in a lot of ways. Is that a fair representation?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, especially as we didn't want investors,
Right.
we really wanted to build this company kind of through bootstrapping. And Cooper and I often talked about like a uniting vision of let's build our granddad's company, and that meant selling something that people actually wanted rather than just creating a high valuation to exit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I talk a lot with entrepreneurs. I'm like, even if you're not planning to exit, people will ask you that question, right? Especially if you're going out for money, because that's how you're going to give your investors their money back. So knowing what kind of company you want to build is really important. Building Granddad's company is very different than building something that's going to give venture capitalists a 10x return in 8 years.
Exactly. It's got completely different motivations. The tension of it is kind of creative and interesting. You have to solve real problems. Richard Chaffetz did the STL launch campaign, yesterday. And even he said, the difference between St. Louis and New York, he's a New Yorker, whereas people are building companies that just want to be good, solid, long-term businesses rather than to exit. And he said, and here's the reality, every good business is sellable anyway.
That's an important framing, is that once you've built it, then if exit is on your mind, somebody's going to buy it because it's a valuable asset.
Because you've created value.
Yeah. That's an important framing for all of us to remember too. But it also sounds like being able to build a strong company in a strong city meant that you could also turn your attention to other opportunities as well. And tell us a little bit, EQ was created back in 2015.
Yeah.
You guys got to St. Louis in 2016 through Arch Grants. By 2017, you were making a new acquisition. So what's that about?
Exactly. How did that come about?
And you know what? We never, ever thought we would ever say we've acquired another company.
Right.
So that was a huge milestone and goes back to your idea of graduation, graduated from Arch Grants with an acquisition.
That's a big deal.
And I mean, what we found was a lot of our clients in St. Louis wanted to talk about their role in St. Louis. One of our services was writing blog posts for companies and helping them express themselves online. We were doing that for Stiefel, Green Street, a bunch of companies here. But a lot of them were doing, had a kind of mission for St. Louis too. And so we were pitching a lot of stories to Kelly at EQSTL. And Kelly was in T-Rex. And so we just kind of bumped into each other, kind of got to know each other.
That proximity thing helps.
Exactly.
And for our listeners, Kelly was the original owner of EQ?
Yeah, exactly. So he founded it in 2015. And then we were pitching him a lot in 2016. And then towards the end of, beginning of 2017, he sat me down and he's like, I'm planning this.
Yeah.
This is where my life's taking me. And I was like, interesting.
There's those serendipitous collisions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for me, it was like one of the things was EQ had helped me navigate the ecosystem when I got here. I found out about a venture cafe. I found out about all this stuff that was going on. And also, one of the funny things about content development is actually when you're learning all this stuff is the best time to write about it. So I ended up having all these thoughts about the ecosystem anyway. And so by acquiring EQ, it was like, okay, well, I can now process a lot of my own learning. And, I wanted to get back into publications on a personal level, and try something new. And what I liked about entrepreneurship in St. Louis is we're not talking just about valuations all the time. One of the things I always say about EQ is now EQ's beat is values over valuations. So it's like what drives people to take these risks and make these decisions.
Yeah. I mean, the stories that you tell in there, first of all, they're interesting because people might not have heard of these companies or these individuals. And I love when you start the freaking article, it tells you how many minutes it's going to take you to read it. So, up front, this is not like, it's going to take you 20 minutes to get through the article. It's a quick read. It's really informative. And, you feel like, I could get through this. Everybody's busy.
Right.
So I thought that you guys add tremendous value in doing that. And then for people to really get an opportunity to learn about the ecosystem. So simple things like that make me very happy.
Hey, time management is a hugely important thing for all of us.
If I see I can read it in 3 minutes, I'm like, yes, I will read it then.
So that's one of the funny things about publishing, right? Is like, that little thing is just like a WordPress plugin, but people love it. And you're not the first. Like, everyone loves that kind of minute count.
It's like doing a stupid survey that tells you it's going to take you 10 minutes versus 2 minutes. Guess which one I'm going to do?
And it's like, so, we talked about graduation. This year, I'm spinning EQ out into its own company.
Oh, that's exciting. What made you do that?
Well, before we get to that.
Yeah, okay.
One of the funny research pieces, I've been researching like journalism business models. And it turns out that, New York Times' revenue is really coming from the crossword, not from its content. So it's like the thing you love is the minute count, whether you read it or not.
Right.
That's fascinating. Will Shortz is now the most valuable man in publishing because he edits the crossword. No, I think that's fabulous. So as you said, you've owned the company now for a couple years and you're researching the business model because it's not going to be tethered to Longneck and Thunderfoot, right?
Yeah.
So in spinning out, what has that meant for you, either where you put your time and attention, what kind of things you're focused on?
Yeah.
Being a serial entrepreneur takes a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky really because I guess, I've seen a lot of kind of, I call them glorious failures,
Which teaches you a lot of things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And somehow I've always had just a support network that has been able to help me make sense of the kind of failures. And so I've got to a point that all these risks are kind of worth taking, and especially if you bootstrap it. And so you're not throwing all your life savings into it or anything like that. You're kind of taking calculated risks. But so right now for me it's a case of I've got to do it. The bee is in my bonnet. I got to take it out and just let it out and see what happens.
Wow. That will be a platform. EQ will be a platform that will grow into. What's your vision?
Yeah, so right now, I think one of the things I've discovered in St. Louis, right, is that there's tons of talent here. And it's actually very high-level talent, people who can teach you how to build presentations, like killer presentations, or speaking, help you be amazing, like TED speakers and that kind of thing. There's a lot of, high-level talent. So one of the things I'm trying to do is rather than create a kind of subscription model that blocks you from access to things, so, a lot of things are like, get 10 more articles if you pay. Rather than do that, I'm trying to build a member services kind of subscription model. So it would be like, hey, you can connect with this person who can be your fractional CTO or your fractional CFO. Or here's someone who can advise you on this policy. So it's kind of like a social network.
I was going to say like a Match.com, but not for dating.
Exactly.
Dating in your business.
Yeah.
But not dating in your business. But yeah.
And we'll leave it at that.
Putting people together that are valuable, right? For your business. That's interesting. So have you tested that? I mean...
Well, so I tested it and found out that everyone just wanted a crossword.
But if you solve the crossword, you'll get an intro. It'll spell the name of the interim CTO you should hire.
Love it.
It's like a magic 8-ball for business. Fabulous.
That is
okay,
really
so you'll
cool.
be adding your crossword. Fabulous. Well, to that point, we all want what?
Well, so it's an interesting one. In the case of EQ, people don't really know what they want yet. But one thing I keep hearing is that they like the storytelling. They like the brief articles. So one thing I really am going to try and do is, I'm quite a long writer. I end up writing thousands of words. I'm going to see if I can make things more concise.
Okay.
New York Times article. 20-minute read, 3-minute read.
Right, exactly. So
So
going to try
making things more accessible in that way, time, high value for a short amount of time.
Yeah, try a lot of new content formats, start to even kind of, make things digestible, kind of work on the basis that maybe traffic doesn't matter, right? So in the old traditional model, you've got all the kind of the BuzzFeed model, it's all about like how much traffic can you generate to monetize ads.
Right.
If I resist advertising as a business, then I don't need to generate traffic. All I need to do is be a useful asset. So I'm trying not to take on any kind of traditional advertising, instead make it member revenue generated. And that means I can try things like, what if I do quick updates that are effectively tweets or GIFs inside of tweets or Snapchat stories or Instagram stories, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try a bunch of like format stuff.
That's pretty cool. I mean, being able to try it and see what works, but not under the gun of advertisers. Because advertisers can direct how your business model and how your business works.
And advertising, you have to deliver certain eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
And so the geography can sometimes be really important then. And I know one of the things we believe, at least about our podcast, right, is that while we're telling St. Louis stories, we're really telling entrepreneurial stories writ large.
Yes.
We just happen to be sourcing them from our own backyard, right?
Absolutely.
And so I kind of get the feel that EQ is in some ways doing the same, right? You know, the source might be a local homegrown source, but that the stories, the readership, the eyeballs could be from anywhere.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know, Arlen Hamilton talked about it at the Vision Conference with Cheryl. And it was like, you know, she talked about we need heroes. If you look at or if you look at online advertising right now, there's no room for a model to create heroes out of small business owners, you know, because these little challenges that someone might have, they don't generate enough interest to support ad revenue. So there's never going to be enough page views to make money to create a publication like that.
Got it.
Whereas if we take a member model where members say, I want this content and I'm going to support it, then we can start to tell those stories and just kind of endure, you know, and build stamina. And I think, you know, EQ draws a lot of inspiration from what's happening in the community. And it's like you guys are doing that. You know, you're telling the values over valuation story. If we can kind of put that to words and use our status as a publication to build relationships with other media organizations, maybe we can be that bridge to kind of circulating St. Louis stories in the national conversation.
You know, what's so interesting is I think that as with entrepreneurship and small business, you can upend business models, you know, whereas a large agency would not dare do that because they are so tied to their business model and generating income for that business to function. But you're upending, you're saying, look, I want to upend the system here. I want to do something a little bit different. We'll see how it works. There's always the opportunity that you find it works wonderful, or just like any entrepreneur, hey, this ain't working. Let's figure out, let's pivot, let's see how we can do different things. But that to me is the way that we grow our economy, because this is different. You know, and what you talk about, I think we've said this, entrepreneurship is the same no matter where the hell you go. You can be in France. I sat on a panel in France, CEO to CEO, and it was so funny because this guy was building a company in France, and we said, what's the common denominator here? Everybody's trying to raise damn money. Right? No matter, it's the capital issue, you know, so the issues don't really change.
Exactly.
And there might be some locality issues, but entrepreneurship, like you said, you can tell that story and you can tell it from different vantage points, which I think people can learn a lot from. You know, so thank you for doing that, you know, telling people stories and having people hear about, you know, what's going on here in St. Louis. So are you thinking about taking these stories on a national platform so it's not so much local any longer?
Yeah, that's exactly the plan. So keep it, you know, prove the model in St. Louis and then take it to other cities. And, you know, I like these kind of underdog or second cities, you know. I think the north of England needs something like this. My old alma mater, university town, I know they're trying to build an ecosystem there. And I think St. Louis, you know, it's at the apex or the crux of all these major global issues, you know, urban, rural, all that kind of stuff. We've got a lot to teach the world. The issues that St. Louis solves all cities have to solve. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be proud of here.
Before we leave, can you tell us a little bit about Bourbon Fridays? Because it is really a unique platform I participated in. You get to talk and you get to drink.
We record too early in the day for the drinking.
But they can play back anytime you want, right?
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Bourbon Fridays it actually came out of T-Rex, a kind of thing that was already happening in T-Rex. Every Friday, everyone...
What, the drinking or the talking?
The drinking bit.
Totally the drinking bit.
Right.
So yeah, Eric Lutzenegger, who's was in, a long-standing member of T-Rex, he was just getting people together over bourbon every Friday. And then we took over EQ and we were like, how do we put T-Rex on the map and get people to know that there's a community here as well? And so we thought, well, why don't we turn that, thing we're doing informally into a formal event and live stream it on Facebook. And the best thing about Bourbon Friday is it's completely volunteer-led. Nick and Vanessa are shooting it. Eric and Megan are organising it. EQ's providing the stream. And we just all collaborate, and it's a good kind of analogy of how the system can kind of collaborate to survive the extinction.
So you can learn something about what people are doing, and then you can learn something about a bourbon, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You've expanded Cheryl's drinking horizon.
Right. Even bourbon is not my thing, but I learned something while I was there. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to have a shout out about that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, we're glad you're here, dude. Is there anything before we start to wrap down?
Yeah. Well, first of all, where can folks find everything we've been talking about? What's the URL?
Right now, it's EQSTL.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm curious about is in telling that universal entrepreneurial story, what are some of the universal themes you think are going to be the stories of 2019?
Yeah, so the thing I'm really, thanks, that's a great question. I mean, the thing I'm into is what's the difference between an entrepreneur and everyone else, right? There's someone who's identified a problem that matters to them and they've decided they're going to risk something in their own life to solve that problem. And it doesn't matter how big or small that thing is. They're the clearinghouse for identifying issues on the ground that they actually believe are so important that they'll go out and solve it themselves.
Well, that is an inspiring note on which to go into the rest of our year together. So I'm really excited by what you're doing and hopefully where we fit into it. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, we have lots to explore because we share your enthusiasm for elevating and celebrating the stories and finding ways to take what we know and the people we meet out far beyond the boundaries of where we live.
Yes.
So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Changing the way you view new ventures, unlocking your creativity and innovation, igniting your thinking about entrepreneurship. It's Entrepreneurially Thinking. Get connected and discover more. Visit entrepreneuriallythinking.com to listen to all your favorite episodes and learn more about our guests, hosts, and sponsors. Feeling inspired? Be sure to share your thoughts, questions, and stories in the comments section. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. The best way to show love is to share and subscribe. Let everybody know that you're entrepreneurially thinking.